Welcome to A Girl in Progress. Let's get into the episode. Hey guys, Emma here. So if you've been tuning into this channel or the podcast, wherever you're watching, for a while, you'll know I normally have inspiring guests on here talking about their daily routines or their journey with how they got started in their business and other endeavors before they felt ready. But I've actually got something a little bit different for you today because it's actually my very first solo episode. So I'm going to be doing these more often where it's just me, myself, and I exploring topics like perfectionism, procrastination, productivity, all of those P words, and giving you actionable tips you can use to take imperfect action in your own life, career, and business. So if you don't know me or you're new around here, I'm Emma. I live in the sunny Sydney, Australia, and I am a writer, the author of the book Progress Over Perfection, and I'm also an imperfect action coach. So I work with creative millennial women to help them overcome self-sabotaging behaviors and limiting beliefs and take imperfect action towards their goals. I'm also the founder of A Girl in Progress, an online destination for women working on themselves for themselves, which you can find at agirlinprogress.com. So today I'm going to be talking about a topic that really goes hand in hand with perfectionism, and that is all or nothing thinking. So I find this is something that a lot of creative and goal-driven women face, especially those who identify as perfectionists. And basically all or nothing thinking is when you tend to think about things in really extreme terms. So basically things that are either good or bad, a success or a failure, your life is perfect or it's a disaster. So it's a cognitive distortion, meaning it's one of those super annoying lies our brains like to tell us, basically based on no evidence at all. So one really common example of all or nothing thinking that I think a lot of us can identify with is in relation to our diets. So it's this idea of being either on the bandwagon or off the bandwagon, or that certain foods are good and others are bad, and really having no in between. So I know I've had that experience of, being on a diet or an eating plan and then slipping up and eating one thing that's not on the menu and thinking, oh, well, that's it. It's all done. It's over. The whole day is a write-off. And then before you know it, you keep eating foods that, maybe aren't the best for you for a week or a few weeks or a month before you decide it's time to get back on the bandwagon. And it's kind of a vicious cycle. You're kind of in that, cycle of yo-yo dieting where you would have been better off just eating moderately in the first place. But I know that's a lesson that many of us take years to learn, and it can really be a daily struggle for some people. But all or nothing thinking can definitely pop up in different areas of our lives too. So we can experience it in terms of our career for sure. So say you're feeling pretty good about yourself and the work you're doing, and then all of a sudden you get an email from a client or your boss saying, this wasn't your best work. Do you mind making these changes? And then all of a sudden you're in a complete spiral. You're thinking, I'm terrible at my job. Everything else that anyone's ever said is good about my work has been a lie. I'm a failure. It's basically being unable to entertain the idea that you made a mistake or didn't do your best work, and the idea that you're still good at your job, you're still talented, you're still a worthy human being at the same time. It's this idea that they just can't coexist. So another example would be things are going really well with your partner, and then they say something that upsets you, or you say something that upsets them, and then you're in an argument and you're not really talking to each other for that hour. And then during that time, you're thinking, well, it's over. They don't love me anymore. Like, I'm going to have to get used to being single and alone again, even though it's totally possible that they still love you, and likely and probable, I would say, and that you still have a good relationship, but you're just having an argument as couples do. So it really goes hand in hand with catastrophizing or worst scenario thinking, but with that added thing that you're completely blind to the possibility that multiple ideas can coexist at once. So another really common scenario where overthinking strikes is when it comes to starting or finishing a project. So say you have a goal you're working towards, like starting a blog, but you tell yourself, oh, well, this person posts on their blog 5 days a week and I can't really commit to that. I could maybe do once every 2 weeks realistically. Plus, I don't have any blog posts ready to go and I don't have a professional logo yet. So, what's the point? I guess I just won't do it. Even though if you did commit to posting, a couple of times a week and you just got it up with a logo you designed yourself, you're still going to be ahead of the person who hasn't started at all, and you would still be so glad you started when you did. So all or nothing thinking is obviously really harmful in a couple of different ways. So firstly, it means we're on a constant emotional roller coaster because we're constantly swinging between I'm awesome, I'm the bomb, and then if something bad happens, it's I'm a failure, my life is doomed, and quite frankly, that's exhausting. It also makes it really hard to stay consistent with anything because we're constantly on the bandwagon or off the bandwagon, and there's no in between. But it's actually that in between that's the sweet spot normally where we can actually stick to things consistently. It's that moderation. And finally, it keeps us stuck. It means we're not taking action towards things until everything is perfect or we know how to do everything. And that's really just sabotaging our progress. Okay, so now we know exactly what all thinking looks like, what it is, and how it affects our lives. You might not have even realized that this is something you're doing, but when you hear about it, it makes so much sense and maybe applies to multiple areas of your life. I know that was the case for me, and I thought I was just a control freak, but once you're able to put a name to it and know exactly what it looks like, it's a lot easier to identify it and stop it in its tracks when it pops up. But how exactly do you do that? Well, now I'm going to take you through my top 3 ways to overcome all or nothing thinking. Tip number 1 is to embrace the grey. So I'm not talking about grey hair, although I am 28, and that's something I'm going to have to think about soon. Hopefully you guys watching on video can't spot any, but I'm actually talking about embracing the grey area, that middle ground. So a lot of us talk about all or nothing thinking. We refer to it as black or white thinking because it's like we have these 2 binaries, black and white, the opposite ends of the color spectrum. But thinking in that way really sets us up to fail, and it's not reality. So rather than trying to make the leap from negative thinking, like I'm terrible at my job, I'm definitely going to get fired, to extremely positive thinking, like I'm the absolute best employee this company's ever seen, because that's too big of a leap. Just try and meet yourself realistically in the middle and say to yourself, I'm a good employee who always tried my best and I made a mistake, and that's okay. So just practice sitting in that grey area and holding 2 opposing ideas in your mind at once. And if it's helpful, try and find examples of yourself outside of yourself where these binaries can coexist. Like one I like is the ocean is beautiful, but it can also be terrifying and powerful. The world is full of these coexisting binaries when you look for them. And it's a great reminder that the same can apply to ourselves. Tip number 2 is to notice the nevers and the always. So these 2 words are absolute surefire signs that you're being swept up in all or nothing thinking. So again, to use this example, say you're having an argument with your partner and you say to things like, you never listen to me, or you always think you know better than me. Not particularly helpful things to say, and it's likely to make them more defensive. And the same goes for your own self-talk. So say you make a mistake in a work report and your boss says, hey, I noticed a couple of errors in here. Do you mind just giving it another once over and making sure it's all good? And you straight away jump to, oh, I always make so many mistakes and I never get things right and I always disappoint everyone. I'm willing to bet that, you've probably, if you looked at the facts, you'd realize it's actually not accurate at all. You've probably written dozens or hundreds of documents in your time and not made any mistakes, and this is a rare occurrence. But because of confirmation bias, you're convinced that this is the case, that you always make mistakes all the time. But next time you find those hyperbolic terms like nevers and always popping up into your thoughts, take it as a sign to slow down and actually take stock of the situation. Look at the facts of the reality of the situation. Are your thoughts actually true? Most of the time, things aren't nearly as bad as we think in the moment. And the third and final step is to make progress your priority. So I know I talk about progress a lot. It's the name of my blog, it's the name in my podcast, it's in the name of my book. But striving for progress really is the antidote to so many things, including all or nothing thinking. So say you have a goal you're working towards, like you want to write a book or deadlift your body weight in the gym. So don't feel like you have to go all in and write the entire book in one weekend or hit that deadlifting goal the second time you go to the gym, because it's just going to lead to burnout, or in the case of the gym, you probably dropping your weights on yourself and injuring yourself. So you're basically incapacitated. So rather than going all in with it, you're far better off breaking it down into smaller tasks and consistently making micro advancements towards those goals. Even if it's only 1% progress every day, that's going to be far more sustainable, and you're actually going to be able to stick to it long term rather than getting so frustrated that you're not making the progress that you want or getting the results that you want, that you end up doing nothing. In James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he gives the example of the workman chipping away at a rock with a hammer over and over again until it eventually busts in two. So we know it wasn't that last blow that cracked it open, but rather the small chipping away that led up to it, even if it didn't really feel like you were getting anywhere at the time. And I think that's a great example, and it definitely applies to your goals. So rather than going full steam, all or nothing, giving it everything all at once, treat it like a marathon where slow and steady wins the race, because it does. So there you have it, 3 strategies you can use to overcome all or nothing thinking, so you can take some of the pressure of yourself and embrace the imperfection of life, because that's what it's all about. So I hope you found this helpful and you were able to take away one or all of these tips and will be able to implement them in your life when these unhelpful thought patterns pop up for you. So I've got plenty more episodes on topics like these coming up, but if there's anything in particular that you'd like covered in the realm of productivity, perfectionism, procrastination, please shoot me a DM and let me know. I'd love to hear it. I'll talk to you next time. Bye. You can also check us out over on agirlinprogress.com, the online destination for women working on themselves for themselves. Or get social with us on Instagram at _girlinprogress. Can't wait to see you there.